Don't pause it, I said, without looking up. She froze. The remote trembled slightly in her hand. She was halfway to the couch, still in heels, coat draped over one arm, like she was unsure whether she'd stay or bolt. What? She asked. The TV was on, but the room was silent. A dark screen. A video file paused at midnight. I repeated myself, softer this time. Don't pause it. Just let it play. She slowly placed the remote on the armrest, her eyes darting between the screen and me, calculating. Which lie should she prepare first? The casual one? The defensive one? The one with fake laughter? I had seen all her lies by now. They wore different masks, but their voice cracked the same way every time. I'm tired, she said. Can we talk in the morning? I reached over and clicked play. The screen stayed black. Just audio. You said he'd never find out. A man's voice chuckled. Then her voice, clear as water. He's too sweet. He'd rather assume he's the problem than admit I could be cruel. She gasped. I turned the volume up. Honestly, her voice continued. I think he'd apologize to me even if he caught us naked. That's the kind of husband I married. I didn't look at her. I stared forward like a corpse. She took a shaky step back. Where did you get that? She already knew. But I answered anyway. Laundry basket. Your jacket pocket. Last week. That recorder. I hadn't seen it in years. I almost forgot it existed. But when I shook the jacket out and heard a thunk, I didn't expect a flash drive taped to the side of a miniature recorder. I could have stopped there. But I listened. To everything. 2 hours and 13 minutes of them. Laughing. Whispering. Mocking me. There were things in there I still haven't processed. Things I hope no man ever has to hear. And now she was standing in our living room. Same woman, same curls, same perfume she wore the night we met. Looking at me like I was the one who cheated. The recording continued. I didn't blink. She did. Twice. Then she stepped forward and reached for the remote. I stood. She froze. I walked past her, into the hallway. I had to leave the room before I said something I couldn't unsay. But behind me, I heard it. The moment she heard the part she forgot she said. Her knees buckled before the sentence even finished. I didn't turn back. She dropped before it ended. I thought I'd feel something. Vindication, maybe. Some warped sense of justice. After all, she was on the floor now, knees cracked on hardwood, hand clutched to her mouth, like she could shove the words back in. But all I felt was empty. Like someone had scooped out my insides and left me watching my life play out through someone else's eyes. She kept saying my name, softly at first, then louder, then panicked. I didn't respond. I leaned on the wall in the hallway, one hand gripping the edge of the doorway, listening to her crawl across the floor like her spine had forgotten how to hold her up. The recording was still playing, but her voice, her real voice, was louder now. Desperate. Cyril, please, just talk to me. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because of the name. Mine. Cyril. She used to say it was old-fashioned and elegant. Lately, she said it like a placeholder. Like she was calling a dog back inside. But now it sounded like the way someone might scream into the dark when they see headlights coming fast and know it's already too late. She tried to grab the remote, to turn it off. Her fingers fumbled. The remote slipped. Hit the floor. Batteries popped out like her last defense mechanism just gave up. I walked back in slowly, still not speaking, and picked it up for her. Replaced the batteries. Clicked pause. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her cheeks like she had a right to them. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she whispered, voice cracking. I handed her the remote and said, no, it wasn't. Then I walked to the window. She crawled to her feet, leaned on the arm of the couch, and said the one line that made my stomach twist more than the recording ever did. Nothing even happened. Not really. That's when I turned. That's when I finally snapped. Nothing happened. I asked. My voice was calm, too calm. Dangerous calm. So the voice on the tape? The things you said? The laughs. The jokes about me apologizing in advance. The way you told him I never satisfy you emotionally, or I cut myself off before saying the rest. Before going into the part that shattered me the most. Was that a fictional podcast episode you were rehearsing? She took a step back. I didn't mean those things. I was just caught in the moment, she mumbled. I needed to vent. I didn't know he was recording. I blinked slowly. You're not upset because of what you said. You're upset because someone finally played it back to you. Silence. Thick. Suffocating. I turned back to the window and watched the neighbor's porch light flicker. A moth kept flying into it like it believed every shock might be the one that turns into warmth. I remember thinking I knew how that moth felt. She sat on the edge of the couch like a prisoner who didn't yet know the charges. Every few seconds, she'd open her mouth like she was about to say something, then close it. Her knuckles were white from clutching her knees. I didn't sit down. I couldn't. I paced. Not because I wanted to look dramatic, but because if I sat down, I was afraid I might never get back up. There was a part of the recording I hadn't played for her yet. The worst part. Not because of what she said, but because of what she didn't. What she let happen. I didn't even tell her I'd found the second file. It wasn't on the recorder. It was buried in the flash drive that had been taped underneath. She must have thought it was just a copy. It wasn't. It was something else entirely. No voices. No talking. Just a 5-minute video. Shot in a hotel room. Silent. Cropped at an angle that only caught the corner of the bed and a pair of high heels on the floor. Her heels. I hadn't watched the full video yet. I clicked play once, saw enough in the first 10 seconds to make my ribs feel like they were imploding, and slammed my laptop shut. That was 2 days ago. I hadn't touched the file since. But tonight, when I saw the way she flinched at her own words, how easily she defaulted to lies, to damage control, to gaslighting, something in me shifted. It wasn't sadness. I'd done sadness. It wasn't even anger anymore. It was clarity. The kind that comes when you realize someone you loved isn't who you thought they were, and maybe never was. She finally spoke, her voice hoarse. Cyril, please. I know I messed up, but it's not like I slept with him. I was drunk. He was just someone to talk to. It never meant anything. You're the one I love. I turned toward her, slowly, and tilted my head. You're sure about that? You want to go on record with that statement? She looked confused for a moment, then suspicious. Her body tensed. What else did you hear? I didn't answer. I just walked to my desk, opened the drawer, and pulled out the printed photo I hadn't planned to show her. The one I had paused mid-frame from the second file. Her hair was in a messy bun. Her back was to the camera. And on the nightstand, right next to a champagne glass, was her wedding ring. Mine still hadn't left my finger. When I dropped the photo onto the coffee table, she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stared at it like it belonged to another life. One she couldn't admit was hers. I sat down then. For the first time that night. My hands were shaking, but I felt steady. Too steady. Like a calm before something very, very bad. You didn't know he recorded that either, did you? I asked. She didn't respond. Her silence said everything. And suddenly, I understood something terrifying. This wasn't her first lie. It was just the first one I caught. She stared at the photo so long I thought her eyes might dry out. I didn't move. I just watched her sit there, shrinking. It was strange, really, watching someone you've loved for so many years slowly deflate in front of you like a balloon losing helium. She used to fill the room, you know? Her laugh, her perfume, her chaos, it all used to mean something. Now she was just small, like the truth had made her physically less. But here's the thing, I needed to hear her say it. Not for justice, not for closure, but because some part of me still clung to the insane hope that maybe I was wrong. That the ring on the nightstand wasn't hers. That the shadow in the video wasn't her voice moaning. That somehow, I had invented all of it. So I asked her, calmly, too calmly, was it just him? She blinked like she'd been slapped. I repeated it. Was it just him, Rhea? Just the guy on the tape? She didn't answer. Instead, she did that thing she always does when she's cornered. She asked a question back. Why are you doing this to me? I almost laughed. To you? My voice cracked, but not with emotion, with the sharp edge of disbelief. She had the audacity to play the victim, here, in our home, 2 feet from the couch where she used to fall asleep in my lap during movie nights, right after texting someone else that she'd rather be anywhere else. I stood again. My legs didn't feel like mine anymore. I walked to the hallway, opened the closet, and pulled down the shoebox I hadn't touched in 4 years. It had our wedding keepsakes in it. The dried boutonniere. Her handwritten vows. A Polaroid from the honeymoon. I didn't bring it out to be sentimental. I brought it out because I needed to see how far she'd fallen. I dropped the shoebox next to her feet. Pick one, I said. Any one. Look at it. Hold it. Tell me what it means to you now. She stared at the box like it was radioactive. Her lip trembled, but she still didn't cry. That was the thing about Rhea. Her tears were rare. Not because she was strong, but because she didn't like showing cracks unless they benefited her. When she didn't move, I knelt down, pulled out the vows, and read hers aloud. I promised to never let silence sit between us. I promised to keep my heart open, even when it's easier to close it. I promised to choose you, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. Each word hit like a slap, and still, she just stared at me like I was a stranger reading someone else's diary. Did you mean any of that? I asked. She finally whispered, I don't know. And that was the moment. That exact phrase. That's when something in me officially broke. Not when I saw the video. Not when I heard the audio. Not even when she lied to my face. It was right then, in that quiet moment, when the woman I gave everything to, my loyalty, my time, my awkward poems, my mother's ring, said, I don't know, like we were talking about what to order for dinner. That was when I realized. I was mourning someone who didn't exist anymore. Maybe never did. I stood up, walked back to the desk, and finally opened the second file again, the one I hadn't finished watching. Not because I needed more proof, but because sometimes you have to hurt all the way through before you can start to heal. She begged me not to. I hit play anyway. There's something strange about watching the person you love on a screen, especially when they don't know they're being watched. It's like time splits. There's the version of you who remembers how she kissed your shoulder in the morning, and then there's this version, this hollowed-out, breathless shell, who's staring at a video of her in a hotel room with dim yellow lamps and wallpaper you've never seen before. It was patterned, floral, classy even. That detail stuck with me for some reason. Maybe because we never stayed anywhere like that. We always went cheap, budget, motel chains where the AC rattled and the carpet was sticky. But he took her somewhere with taste. I don't know why that detail made it worse. But it did. The video wasn't explicit. Not in the way you'd expect. No nudity. No obvious sounds. But it was intimate in a way that burned slower and deeper. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, one heel dangling from her foot, slowly twisting it as she talked to him. The camera must have been recording from his phone, propped up somewhere. I could only see her side profile. She was smiling. But not in that polite, public way she used with strangers. No, it was the smile she used to give me when we stayed up late talking about nothing, drinking wine, and pretending we could afford to renovate the kitchen one day. That smile, it shattered me more than any sex tape ever could. Then she said something I hadn't heard the first time I played it. He asked her if she'd told me anything yet. She laughed and said, he can't even look me in the eyes lately. I don't think he wants to know. And I honestly don't blame him. Some men just fold. Fold. That word hit like a crowbar to the chest. She wasn't even angry with me. She pitied me. Like I was weak for not confronting her. For giving her space. For cooking dinners and folding laundry and doing the damn taxes while she played house with someone else in some floral wallpapered fantasy suite. I paused the video there. Not because I couldn't watch the rest, but because I suddenly didn't want to. Not anymore. The man who needed answers had left the room. What was left now was a man who already knew. Too much, in fact. Every second I kept watching was just self-harm disguised as research. When I turned back around, Rhea was gone. I heard the bathroom door click shut. I sat there, staring at the blank screen, listening to the faint sound of running water. She was either crying in the shower or rehearsing the next lie. Probably both. I considered knocking. For a second, I even thought about opening the door, just to look her in the eye one last time before whatever this became finished breaking. But then I saw her phone. She'd left it on the kitchen counter, screen up, unlocked. Messages were still coming in. I knew I shouldn't. But I did. The most recent message wasn't from the man in the video. It was from someone else. A woman. He doesn't know about me, does he? And below that, a photo. Not a hotel room. Not a bed. Not even anything sexual. It was a picture of my wife holding hands with someone else, on a park bench, in daylight, smiling. The same exact smile. The one I thought belonged to me. That was when I realized. The guy on the video wasn't the only one. He may not have even been the first. The photo on Rhea's phone did something the recordings hadn't. It didn't break me, it hollowed me. Like someone reached inside and scooped out the last pieces of what was left. The woman she was holding hands with in that photo? I didn't recognize her. Never seen her before. But she was smiling. Not at the camera, not at Rhea, but at me. At my life. Like she knew exactly where she stood and exactly how far out of the loop I was. The timestamp on the photo was from 3 weeks ago. The same weekend Rhea told me she was going to her sister's cabin for a mental health break. She even asked if I could feed her plants while she was gone. I remember lining up the succulents near the window, misting them gently like an idiot. It never occurred to me she might be lying while handing me the watering can. I kept scrolling through the messages. They were careful, coded, no names, no details that would make things obvious at a glance. Just snippets. I miss your voice. Do you think he suspects? I still wear that ring when I'm with him. It's almost funny. One message stopped me cold. It was dated 2 months ago. He thinks he's married to a character I retired years ago. I don't know why that one hit so hard. Maybe because it told the truth better than anything else had. The woman I thought I married. The woman who cried at Pixar movies, who danced barefoot in the kitchen, who used to write sticky notes and hide them in my books. She didn't exist anymore. If I was honest, I wasn't even sure she had ever been real. Maybe that version of her was just a role she played until it became too heavy to carry. I locked the phone and placed it back exactly where she left it. I didn't want her to know I'd seen the messages. Not yet. Not because I was planning revenge or some kind of dramatic confrontation, but because I was tired of giving her the upper hand. She always dictated the pace. She was always 3 moves ahead, adjusting, spinning, reframing everything so she could keep control of the narrative. Not this time. Not anymore. The water stopped running in the bathroom. A few seconds later, I heard the familiar squeak of the door opening, followed by the soft shuffle of feet. She didn't speak right away. She just walked into the room wearing one of my old t-shirts, the one with the faded concert logo she always stole. She looked smaller now, tired, washed out. I don't know what to say, she finally whispered. I didn't look up. That's fine. I wasn't waiting for you to. She sat down at the edge of the couch again, wrapping her arms around herself like she was cold. Do you hate me? It was such a weird question. Like this was high school. Like hate was the opposite of love. She didn't understand. She still didn't get it. No, I said. I don't hate you. I grieved you. Quietly. While you were out laughing with other people and holding hands in parks. I already buried the version of you I loved. I'm just trying to figure out what's standing in front of me now. She flinched at that. Not dramatically. Just a subtle flicker in her eyes. But it was the first time I saw something real in her since the whole thing began. A crack in the mask. You've changed, she said, voice barely audible. Yeah, I replied. So have you. Except you were just better at hiding it. She leaned forward, face in her hands, and for the first time since everything unraveled, she started crying. Real, violent sobs that shook her shoulders and echoed off the walls. I stood still, letting her drown in it. I didn't comfort her. I didn't touch her. I didn't say it was okay. Because it wasn't. And for once, I wasn't going to pretend it was. She cried for 17 minutes. I didn't time it intentionally. I just happened to glance at the clock when it started, and again when it stopped. 17 minutes of racking sobs, gulped apologies, and repeated whispers of my name like it still meant something to her. She said she didn't know why she did it. That it wasn't planned. That she didn't mean for it to go that far. I didn't interrupt. I just sat across from her, watching the woman I once believed was my future unravel into someone I wouldn't trust with my mail, let alone my heart. When she finally lifted her face from her hands, it was red and blotchy, her eyes swollen. Her voice came out hoarse and small. Do you think we can fix this? She asked. I stared at her. Not like a man looks at the love of his life, but like a stranger trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. What was this exactly? Our marriage? Our home? Her shame? My humiliation? What exactly was she asking me to fix? The broken thing or her guilt over breaking it? I don't know what this is anymore, I replied. I don't think you do either. She wiped her face with the hem of my old shirt. I almost asked her to take it off, not out of anger, but because it didn't belong to her anymore. Not really. That shirt had history. It was from the night we got caught in the rain after that concert downtown. The night we ran 5 blocks laughing like idiots and kissed under a bus shelter. She had claimed it as hers after that, like some symbol of our love. And now she was crying into it like a burial cloth. She looked up again. Cyril, you don't understand. I was so lonely. You weren't. You weren't present for so long. I felt invisible. That was when the laugh came. Not loud. Not cruel. Just a small, tired sound that escaped my throat before I could stop it. I shook my head. I cooked for you. I listened to your work stories even when you repeated them 3 times. I rubbed your back when you couldn't sleep. I planned weekend trips. I remembered your mom's allergy meds better than you did. Invisible? You don't feel invisible when someone sees you. You feel invisible when you stop looking back. She opened her mouth to protest, but stopped. Because it was true. She hadn't looked at me in months. Not really. And now she was upset because I finally stopped looking at her too. I stood up, walked to the hallway, and pulled out the overnight bag I'd packed 2 nights ago. I didn't plan to use it, not unless I had to. But something in me had known this was coming. That maybe the truth would arrive fast and loud, and I wouldn't have time to think. Just act. She didn't notice it until I placed it by the door. "You're leaving?" she asked. "I don't know if I'm coming back," I said. Her whole body collapsed inward, like the air had been pulled out of her lungs. "You can't just walk out like this." "But you could," I said, over and over again. "And not just physically, emotionally, mentally. You walked out months ago. I just didn't realize I was the only one still showing up." She rushed toward me then, grabbing my hand. "Cyril, please. Please. We can go to therapy. We can rebuild. I'll end it with everyone. I swear. I'll do anything. I'll block them. I'll quit my job. I'll cut off every single. I don't want you to erase your mess just so you can pretend it never happened," I said, pulling my hand back. "You don't get to hit reset like this is a board game. This is my life you detonated. You don't get to dictate the cleanup." She sank to the floor. Again, it was always the floor with her. Always so quick to crumble, as if collapsing into herself was a form of redemption. I turned back to the living room. The air felt heavier now, like the walls were listening. The plants by the window, the ones I had watered while she was off on her mental health retreat, looked limp, browning at the edges. Just like us. Starved quietly over time. I took one last look at her. Not the woman I married. Not the girl I danced with barefoot in our first apartment. Just a version of someone I used to know, sobbing on the hardwood floor of a life she helped burn down. And then I opened the door. Not because I had somewhere to go, but because staying meant pretending I could unhear what I'd heard, unsee what I'd seen, and unfeel what I felt. And I was finally done pretending. The door closed behind me with the softest click, but it echoed in my chest like a shotgun blast. For the first time in months, maybe years, the air felt clean. Not light. Not easy. Just clean. The kind of air you breathe after a storm when the ground still smells like rain and ash. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. I walked past the neighbors' houses, one foot in front of the other, past their glowing windows and silent TVs, and I didn't think about what I'd left behind. I thought about what I might find ahead. I stayed at a cheap hotel that night. Nothing fancy. Just a clean bed, a working lock, and silence. Beautiful, honest silence. I didn't cry. I didn't break down. I didn't text anyone or scroll or stare at the ceiling asking why. I just laid there, breathing like I was practicing how to be alive again. The next morning, I went to a diner. I ordered pancakes and coffee. A middle-aged waitress with chipped nail polish smiled at me like I looked familiar. Maybe I did. Maybe she'd seen 100 men like me, sleep-deprived, hollowed out, sitting with a ring still on their finger because taking it off felt like admitting they'd wasted years. She didn't ask questions. She just poured coffee and kept my mug full. That quiet kindness. It meant more than she'll ever know. The next few weeks were strange. I didn't go back to the house. Rhea texted, called, emailed. She left long, guilt-soaked voice messages, most of which I didn't listen to. Not because I hated her, but because I didn't need anything from her anymore. Closure, answers, apologies. Those are illusions we chase so we don't have to face the real work. Healing alone. I found a small studio apartment downtown. Nothing big, just a space that was mine. I bought a used couch off Craigslist, a bookshelf, and a lamp that flickered unless I tapped it just right. It was imperfect, but it was honest. I started writing again, not for anyone, just for myself. I went to the gym. I reconnected with my brother. I even joined a book club, which sounds like a sitcom cliche, but ended up being one of the best decisions I've made. I laughed, real, unforced laughter, with people who didn't know my history, who didn't pity me, who just liked me for showing up. One night, about 2 months later, I took a walk down by the lake. It was cold, the kind of sharp wind that wakes you up. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt proud of the man I'd become, not because I survived her betrayal, but because I chose not to let it define me. I thought healing would come in a dramatic moment, some huge revelation, or a tearful monologue. But it didn't. It came slowly, quietly, in the small decision to put myself first. In the moment I looked in the mirror and didn't see a victim anymore. Rhea never cheated on me. She cheated on the version of me she built in her head, the one who would fold, forgive, forget. But I didn't fold. I rebuilt. She lost a husband. I found myself. And honestly, that's the happiest ending I never saw coming.